Welcome back to another episode. I'm Jesse Math, VP of Strategic Partnerships here at Keen Decision Systems. Very, very grateful and excited to be here with Devyn McHugh, Director of Programmatic at Quigley-Simpson. Hi, Devyn.
Hey, Jesse. How's it going?
Very good. Looking forward to the conversation.
Same here. Thanks for having me.
Cool. Well, I'm really in particular excited to talk to you today because at Keen we talk a lot with analytics folks and we talk a lot with strategy folks. But ultimately what we're talking about is media buying and execution. And as someone who's leading teams tasked with execution and, executing themselves, I'm really excited to talk about the impact of those analytics and of those strategies on your world and how it impacts how you buy and what you buy. This is going to be a great conversation.
Yeah, I'm excited to chat about it too. And I'm really glad that we were introduced in the first place. Jesse was referred to me from my VP of Data and Analytics, who said, listen, you guys are going to be in the same spot, same conference, make sure you say hi. And that's perfect for me to get to know more people and more teams in the measurement space, especially within modeled measurement and attribution, because that's where the future of media buying will lead, to have more advanced measurement strategies and utilizing technology for measurement and attribution rather than just for targeting or activation. So yeah, it's super important for me to have more conversations with measurement teams, because if I can't prove out the efficacy of my paid media, right, I'm out of a job. So it's good to make these connections and learn more from each other.
Yeah, awesome. So let's start pretty broadly. I mean, programmatic, of course, now is a mainstay line item on the media plan. And oftentimes it just says, it says programmatic. So, how do you think of that programmatic line item on media plans? And what is it today? And is it what it should be?
Yeah, so I mean, today, if I see just a line of programmatic on a media plan, that's definitely a concern, and that means we need to have more conversations with the strategy and planning team or whoever is building that out. And we had this conversation at Programmatic IO, but programmatic is not a channel, right? It's not a place to just throw media dollars and then say you're done with it. Programmatic is a technology with a host of different digital channels underneath its umbrella. So programmatic is really a way to strategically and incrementally target new audiences with full control and transparency over how those ads are being delivered. It's a great place to test. It's a great place to learn more about your audiences and get insights back to better inform your media plan and other channels like search, like social. So there's so much to be done within the programmatic space that seeing it just as a line item in a media plan, I mean, that is completely outdated, right? Let's dig deeper into what that programmatic media is. Is it online video? And from there, is it in-stream? Is it outstream? And what's your strategy against that, and your different KPIs? So really, it's a technology to access any digital channel that you're looking to hit. So it's definitely advanced past just the one channel for sure.
So out of all those digital channels, we're talking audio, connected TV, out of home, display, online video, and I'm sure much more than that now too. Um, how how do you how does how do you decide, how is it decided what within programmatic you're going to access?
Yeah, I mean it's a host of different considerations, and one of our biggest ones, I mean, of course, creative, right? Do we have the right creative and the right capabilities to access these channels in a meaningful way? So, should we have CTV on the plan if we don't have a great TV spot to do that? So that's a major consideration. But really closely tied is how are we being measured? Because there are some channels that there is going to be a lack of measurement on a week over week or day over day basis. So, do we need to have a secondary measurement strategy attached to these different channels that we want to run on? And I don't want to recommend anything that's not going to be set up for success, where we can prove out to the marketing director, the CMO, the CFO, that this strategy is worthwhile and is directly tied to revenue growth. So it's really my job as the programmatic lead to make sure I have the full understanding, which of course it's ending battle, right? Always an uphill battle in terms of learning as much as possible. There's always something more to learn within the space. But having a good understanding of all of the different strategies and channels and technology that we can access within programmatic, and then back into how that will best fit this media plan, this KPI, this goal, this creative message, and make sure that there's measurement attached so that we can prove out the efficacy of running that way. So I try to stay very aware of all the different capabilities in the space because every media plan is really bespoke, and I want to make sure that we're setting everything up for success.
Yeah. That word success is an interesting one, I think, for marketers, both agency side and brand side, because yes, everyone wants performance, right? And but the nuance of what that performance means from a KPI perspective is really interesting and really influential, and I'm sure very influential in what you end up executing. Because I think collectively all of our goals are to grow businesses, right? That's like the macro lens of performance. But then there's like the weekly report view of performance, right? I think Quigley is really ahead of the game here, so let's just say that. But like across when you go to programmatic IO and you're talking from an industry perspective of like the programmatic practitioner's perspective, do you feel programmatic is set up well to enable that brand growth KPI view of performance, or is it really optimizing for the weekly report?
The unfortunate truth of that is that we are beholden to weekly goals, and we are right in terms of short term. We have to show performance in the short term, even if that performance is very directional and utilizing measurement and attribution that isn't directly tied to incremental revenue. That's the unfortunate reality and the game that we have to play. And what I and my role is to really make sure that both clients, heads of strategy and planning, my traders, right, and the different teams that we're working with, stay away from getting too closely tied to just playing that numbers game of trying to get the CPA down or the ROAS up. That is something that we have to have as a guiding light in the short term, but there needs to be a more extended and high level plan for growth where these programmatic channels are tied in with the other performance channels, and that this is a layered and multifaceted media plan that programmatic has, that whatever programmatic strategy we're using has a real goal and a real value attached to it. So we do have to look at the week over week numbers, but also making sure we're having those conversations and making sure all sides are educated into where measurement breaks down in the short term and where we need to stay the course, even though metrics aren't looking great in the short term. Because branding and awareness, right, and growing your bottom line, all of that takes time and it takes investment. And we need to do it so that fluctuations aren't so dramatic in the future in terms of performance. But I love working at an independent agency like Quigley-Simpson, to your point, because we are a small shop and everyone's wearing a lot of different hats, and we're going up against very massive big players in the industry with tons of resources. So we really need the brands and client teams to grow so that we can grow, right? Like if you're not growing your bottom line, we as your agency partner aren't able to grow either. So we feel very personally attached to the brands that we work with, their long-term growth. So that's really the strategy that we have with everything that we're doing. Meeting a week over week KPI is really great, and getting that CPA down is really great in the short term. But did you reach your revenue goals this quarter, and did you grow your revenue year over year? That's something that all channel leads needs to keep top of their mind, not just myself.
Right. Ideally, that revenue goal is like the CFO's view of corporate revenue, not like a click-based or channel-based revenue goal, right?
100%. Yeah, exactly. We want that revenue goal to be the bottom line, which includes all organic and any different paid channel and first party retargeting strategy and what have you. We want to help support that. Yeah.
Right. Because it's just kind of funny to me because what I see oftentimes within programmatic is that like if it is a quote unquote performance plan, that leads to low CPM, like clickable media that fits a measurement plan, right? Like the weekly measurement plan. And then channels like video, connected TV are deemed to be upper funnel or like awareness plays. And sure, they have like a broader, longer term impact. But it always puzzles me is like, well, like how come like the display banner is something that can affect consumer behavior, but 30 seconds of sight, sound, and motion is like this lofty upper funnel non-performance vehicle, right?
Totally. And I'm also not someone, I really do believe in programmatic as a technology and the different creative formats it's able to lend us and our toolbox for paid media strategies. So I come from a more optimistic perspective where I don't think that display banners are inherently evil and bad, right? Like a 320 by 50 banner has its space in the zeitgeist in the sense that it is cheap and it is easily insertable. And if you have one message and one logo you just want to hit people with at a high frequency, you are able to do that with a 320 by 50. But it is something where I have to, if I'm working with another programmatic partner or I'm working with a new trader, what have you, and they raise their hand and they say the 320 by 50 is showing our best incremental ROAS of this campaign. I'm like, well, no, it's not, right? Like, it serves its purpose, but that small banner is likely not moving the bottom line in the way that we need it to. So it's I mean, not to dumb it down, but to maintain some common sense in the buy, I think is super important. And to think about the user experience with every different aspect of your media plan. Because if the numbers are looking a little bit silly or a little bit too good to be true, it's likely that the user experience on the other end isn't that great. And it's likely that it's a very high frequency with very cheap media. And it's just, again, it's playing that numbers game on the other end where machine learning has gotten very smart at using the signals available to them to show back connected performance when that's not always the case. In fact, it's often not the case.
Right. So that's awesome. I mean, you get to really be front and center and applying that common sense, like as the buyer, understanding the experience that you are delivering. What does it look like internally in terms of the collaboration between analytics, creating the measurement plan, strategy, creating the goals and the strategy and the plan? Where does the media buyer sit in that kind of trilogy of making sure that your team is buying the common sense, impactful stuff that's delivering value to the brands that you work for?
Yeah, well, if you're like me, you're just very loud about it to all relevant parties and insert yourself in those conversations to make sure that, you know, certain things are happening. And really, from my perspective, there's new things I want to test all the time, or there's aspects of one media plan in one corner of our agency that's working very well that I want to bring over to other forms of business, to other accounts and other KPIs that might have a different, you know, other people attached. So there's usually things about any media plan that I'm very excited about this brand experiencing or trying for the first time. So I tend to be very loud about that. But yeah, collaboration is everything, and oftentimes we disagree, and I think that that's awesome. Disagreeing is one of my favorite things to do. Like, let's talk about it. I want to hear your perspective, and I want to explain to you where I'm coming from, and from there, let's have the, you know, the most educated and best path forward for the client. And I think that, and there's value here, so I get why we do it, but we work hard to have a united front in our recommendations back to client. I would argue that it's okay to let the clients and the brand teams in on these conversations and disagreements, to let them know that, you know, there's a lot of different ways to attack a given problem and a lot of different strategies that could drive success. What's the best way and path forward right now? Because that might change in 6 months, and then those different perspectives become more relevant. And it's good that other people had that conversation because then we get to learn from each other. So disagreeing, collaboration, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, it's one of my favorite parts of the job.
I had the privilege of being part of the team that essentially launched Nike's direct consumer, Nike.com performance uh, programmatic strategy 10 years ago or more. And now looking back at the things that we did are not the things that we would have done today, right? Like in terms of like click-based retargeting as the center of the strategy to drive growth. Um, So, and I bet that that's evolved, but I also bet that there's still an element where when you get past the strategy to drive CPA and the measurement plan to measure it, which is probably, certainly involves some level of platform metrics and multi-touch attribution, and you need to show the impact for that measurement plan. I would imagine that 300 by 250, and retargeting is still a mainstay of the strategy, but probably also the programmatic practitioner understands that retargeting probably isn't delivering a consistently positive consumer end experience with the media, and there's so much more to do cross format to drive brand growth. Does the programmatic practitioner, like, do they feel relegated to retargeting and not want to do that much more?
It's something that I'm asked to target on almost every single performance media plan, and I think it's a necessary evil. Maybe not necessary evil. Maybe that's not the best way to put it, but it's something. Again, I think any aspect of first party audiences and efficient, targeting outreach and what have you, there's a place for that in a media plan. It's just about making sure that the client and the brand team knows that this is a means to an end. This is not scalable. This needs to be capped. The metrics on the other end are directional. If the ROAS is looking too crazy, that's because it is looking too, like, it is too crazy, right? Here are the pitfalls of attribution there. Here are the pitfalls of retargeting. That deterministic cookie ID is really only 8% of the bid stream. So here are some other, it's being modeled at the ID level. It's being modeled at the conversion level on the other end, right? So just understanding the pitfalls and unpacking the misconceptions about that aspect of that media plan. We'll run it, and a lot of the time, that is my way in to get a brand into a DSP for the first time. It's like, okay, great, we're going to work within your MTA model. We're going to work within, your GA4 looker data or what have you, within your last touch attribution strategy. We'll work within that and we'll create new benchmarks for this. And then we are going to scale you past this. And this will be a strategy that we build on because I want these brands to be reaching their incremental audiences. And I want them to unpack the benefits to programmatic technology and all of the different aspects and ways that we can reach a new user through TV, through audio, through digital out of home, and through a lot of the new emerging dynamic creative that we can utilize that, again, benefits the user experience and allows us to learn more about the consumer and the brand itself. So it's a necessary evil. It exists. We work within that. We just want to make sure that those budgets are capped and that it is not the end all be all of programmatic. Is it your way in? Great. Let's get you on a DSP and let's think about how much we can scale past this. So I would, say to any brand, if you only think of programmatic as display retargeting, I would say work with your agency partner to learn more because there's a lot more to unpack, and that's something that absolutely should be capped if it should be on the media plan at all.
Chances are, the brand side marketer doesn't necessarily, if they think about programmatic, as something if they're knowledgeable about wanting to do programmatic, and that leads them to display retargeting at all, what they're probably just interested in is like what they can report back to their organization about the accountability of their media dollars, right? So I think they're looking to the agency to say, here's my dollars, here's my growth goals, here's my performance goals. I need to prove it, right? All right, Devyn, now you are in that marketer seat, right? Also, like, and you know everything that you know about programmatic, and you get to design kind of you get to design that program for success. How would you shift that conversation from, like, you know, how we're looking at performance on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis to, like, how do we really understand the power of what you're buying through programmatic and turn that into a multi-channel performance vehicle? What needs to be in place?
I put myself in the seat of these directors of marketing and what have you. I fantasize about being brand side all day, every day. What could I be doing better? But I mean, the reality of the situation is that these are some of the hardest working people in the industry is the brand side marketing teams, and they're under some of the biggest amounts of pressure. And these teams have been created in the last 10, 15 years. The structure of the in-house marketing team has been created around being able to directly tie a paid media dollar to a revenue dollar on the other end. So, what we have to do to be successful agency partners and to help out those brand side teams is to work within that structure, and to make sure that we are held accountable for all of the media that we run, but we have an educated conversation about what that accountability looks like, because we shouldn't just be attached to view through revenue or an MTA model that we know has so many holes in its measurement. Let's instead work together to have a layered measurement strategy where we have multiple different POVs, the same way that we have a layered paid media strategy, right? No one thinks anymore that one channel is the end all be all, or at least that's not the case for 99% of brands out there. It is the exact same case with revenue. MMMs are not perfect, MTAs are not perfect, your last touch site side measurement is not perfect. But let's look at them all together. Let's invest in these different measurement partners who are going to specialize in what you're trying to execute and how you're trying to grow. And from there, then we get to just focus on the paid media that we know makes sense for this brand. Like, let's go back to basics. Let's have a really great, strong branded message, creative that matches that brand message, but also matches the channel and benefits the user experience wherever it's run. Let's go back to higher share of voice, bigger screens, and more impact on what we're doing. And from there, the audience targeting and the different technology that we can test and all of that, it becomes a lot more fun when we know that there are multiple different measurement sources that can hold this media accountable and aid us in our attribution and aid us in our optimization. So yeah, as a brand marketing lead, I would want to make sure that all of that was in place so that we can have some fun with the media plan and go back to some common sense basics, and think about the user on the other end, and think about how, if as long as we're improving their ad experience, right, and targeting them with relevant messaging, then we'll see that benefit the brand on the other end.
Yeah. And so I think part of that is I've heard you talk before about the power of probabilistic measurement. Um, what first of all, what is probabilistic measurement? What changes that represents, and why is that such an advantage for what you're calling common sense or high impact growth plans?
Yeah, so probabilistic measurement is machine learning making highly educated decisions on the signals that's available to them to it. And I think most people don't even know that most DSPs are utilizing probabilistic measurement to show their view through conversions, and to create a household level ID graph off of an individual, because the deterministic signals that exist, like cookies, like IP addresses, like maids, they all have holes, they all have limits to their scalability. We as human beings have a lot of different footprints, but none of them are universal or holistic. So probabilistic measurement has been around a very long time in the RTB space, in open web targeting, in open web attribution, because we've never had that one-to-one, right? Especially since cookies have deprecated. So probabilistic measurement has been around. It is super important to lean into. And it's important to understand how your partners utilize probabilistic measurement, and how they connect those dots, how they model it, how they learn from it over time and improve those models, and really what their strategy is within that. Because if we were to rely on deterministic signals, we would have such a pinpointed view of what we were doing and what we were running and how audiences were reacting that I would argue it's almost never relevant, right? We need probabilistic measurement at the ID level for targeting and attribution on the other end. And so let's engage with our partners about what that means, and what that strategy is from each of them.
So it sounds like your advocacy, both to the brand and to like your internal colleagues, is saying, all right, step one in determining what this programmatic line item is going to be on our strategy is we need to know the measurement plan because we're aligned on the on like the goal, which is grow the brand. Now we need to know how we're measuring that growth. And if you're telling Devyn, if you're telling me, Devyn, that like the measurement plan is I need to prove that I'm serving an ad to someone who then goes to my site and buys or goes to my store and buys, then there's only so many things I can buy because then I basically need a click, or I need, a something that I can directly measure post impression on. And what you're saying is that the way that the world really works is that first of all, those clicks are imperfect and that post impression is imperfect anyway, right? Second of all, the way that the world works is that the channels are all interacting with each other and like the click isn't what we should be measuring. It's like everything, like what really led someone to click. Was it that last second ad or was it the three ads before that? And how do we understand those interactions, right?
And think about yourself as a consumer,
Right.
because you know, when was the last time you clicked on anything on your desktop or on your mobile device where you weren't
Right.
like immediately like, oh, I didn't mean to click on that. Like, let me go back to what I was originally doing. But that's not a bad thing that that brand and that logo and that message got in front of me, because 3 days later, I probably will Google whatever it is that I wanted from that brand or what have you.
Right.
So yeah, I completely agree in terms of, it's not a perfect system and it's never going to be a perfect system. And Programmatic made its bed because Programmatic raised its hand 15 years ago and said, we can connect revenue to every single paid media dollar. Like, we can show that attribution on the other end and we can track these users across all of their different websites and what have you. And we know exactly what they're doing. We created the bed that now, 15 years later, CMOs and CFOs want to see that still. But it had holes then, just as it has holes now. It's just the holes are a little bit more obvious these days. But the people should never have bought that in the first place, because we all know as human beings, we don't even know sometimes why we buy. We don't even know sometimes why we are attached to a brand or lifetime loyalists or what have you, or want to try something out one week versus another. It's emotional. It is illogical. We have, different patterns for different intents, and even just talking to someone is sometimes what most of the time is what
Very
encourages
much.
someone to buy, and those are not trackable digital signals, nor should they be. So we've gotten to this place where measurement needs to be perfect. We need to have a source of truth and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, but that's just not how human beings work. Let's remember that in our marketing strategy, because we don't want to inhibit the user experience. We don't want to limit ourselves in terms of how we buy media based on getting the exact answer back and that exact trackability, because it's just not how anything works. At some point, you do have to just trust your gut, trust the brand message, trust the goal, and reach the
Mm,
right users at the right time as best as you can, and learn from that and iterate, and work within that space, because you're
yeah.
never going to be 100% confident and have that full 100% understanding of that attribution on the other end.
Yeah. Yeah, I admit that I have at least once, acted like I was taking a picture of my daughter on a swing set, but was really actually taking a picture of the shoes that the dad next to me was wearing. It's like, how do you attribute that, right? So, yeah, I think there's opportunity. Like, it sounds like I think that there's just opportunity in recognizing that the systems of yesterday, that in some cases are still deployed today, recognize like moving past them in what was designed to be a perfect measurement system and recognizing that imperfection is actually leading us to a better place.
I was just also gonna to roll it back. I mean, it's also a really exciting time to be in programmatic, which is really at this point all of our TV that's not a walled garden, right? That is
Mhm.
programmatic, and this is where innovation happens. This is where new tech pops up. This is where really smart people try to solve problems and fill in the gaps. So it's a really exciting place to be working, because yes, there's a ton of pitfalls and bad actors in our industry, But there's also really great partners like Keen, right, who wants to come to the table with new technology to improve a problem. And they're utilizing best practices and trying to push our industry forward. So, from my perspective, it's a really exciting time to be working in the space because of all of the issues that we're facing.
Yeah.
In the open web, it's basically the open market. Like, this is where new players pop up to solve those problems. So, it's been great getting to know them and getting to know those new teams and that new tech.
Yeah. We haven't run a traditional programmatic podcast episode here where we're talking about the building blocks of the plan, which you mentioned creative, you've mentioned audience a couple times, all which, and then the measurement plan. But I do want to ask about how the implications of retail media in the programmatic space, some of which are using the same tools, right? Um, is and the promise of retail media is audience and measurability. Once again, just like programmatic was from the beginning. Is this like is this just another way in to try to like do the same measurement plan again to show the direct sales impact of every dollar spent from a deterministic lens, or is this something else?
It's a great point. And let's even get back further to basics. Why is retail media so strong in terms of measurement? And it's because they have that stronger ID graph, because they have that first party data at scale. They own that user journey as the user moves through that retail media network. So it's much stronger data, which means it's much stronger attribution and ability to measure on the other end. But this again is a closed loop. This is a walled garden. There is not going to be as much visibility 9 times out of 10 with working with these different partners in terms of how they're measuring. There's not going to be nearly as much control of the media that you run and the creative that you're able to run in terms of formatting or what have you. And you have to work within these partner systems. So retail media is hugely powerful, but we still need to understand their own pitfalls in terms of measurement and the lack of. So in some cases, levers, optimizations, insights or what have you that you can get back. But it's also really exciting because of what it's able to offer us. Programmatically speaking, we get so much learnings from retail media that we're able to apply in the open web, and vice versa. So really our just high level strategy with brands when they're looking to get retail media off the ground, whether that be through Amazon or another partner, is to make sure that your storefront is already as efficient as possible. It's the same thing in making sure that your website has a strong SEO strategy before you start running paid. Like that is, and there are tons of resources available to make sure that that user experience as they move through that retail media network to purchase your product is highly optimized and is beneficial to the consumer. So make sure that that is a priority. And then from there, we can have a lot of fun with how we target and what we learn from those platforms to apply to different aspects of the media plan. But it is not the end all be all because you're still working within that limited corner, and we want to make sure. And we also have a conversation with measurement all the time with these different retail media networks where we have to go back to a media efficiency ratio from the dollars you're getting back from retail rather than just looking at the attributed ROAS in the platform. We see a lot more success and ability to scale when that's the case, especially during sales and what have you. So yeah, it's there's still pitfalls, even though it's a very strong place to run your media.
Yeah. It sounds like whether it's retail media or just outside the keywords um, that influence your ability to buy effectively are one, incrementality, and two, interaction effects. And those aren't two different things; those are one thing, right? It's because it's like sure you might be able to measure one channel more than the other, but was that measurement really was that channel causal? Did that channel, even though you can measure that channel, is that really why a consumer did something, right? Um, and I don't think you're arguing necessarily that like the more upper funnel stuff would on their own be more causal, but also they would cause interaction effects with other media channels to your point, also the rest of the infrastructure that the marketing team cares about, how well built out their storefront is, their entire footprint interacts, and all these, not one element is necessarily the causal element. Your goal is to change hearts and minds of consumers and get them interested in the brand. Uh, Trust your consumer, because if you tell a compelling story, that consumer will know how to Google it, in your words. Drives me crazy about like QR codes also, like trust your consumer a little bit, right? Like why, like you're expecting them to like be ready to scan a QR code on a TV screen. Why not just trust that they're smart enough to want it and Google it, right? Um, so yeah, understand how all these things are working together, not just within programmatic, but also like, you know, what are the elements that are going to make your search volume go up,
Yeah,
right?
it's really not a bad thing that
Yep.
investing in one channel shows impact in another. That's why, again, it's important to remember what the bottom line is. How has your
Right.
revenue grown, and are you hitting those goals?
Mm-hmm.
And from there, we'll back into likelihoods and correlations and what have you.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's not a bad thing that these different channels interact with each other, and that a user can be touched in a myriad of different ways as they move through the funnel.
Yeah, awesome. That's a really good place to leave it. I think is understanding how all the things are working together. So thank you again, Devin. It's been very insightful, and I appreciate you joining us today, sharing your wisdom.
Yeah, I love chatting with you, Jesse. Always a good time. Appreciate you having me.
Okay.